Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's kind of a cloudy day for Saturday here in New York. And of course, many of you probably already know, I'm Robert Gumbs, and this show is The Concerned Forum. And we're going to talk about a few subjects today, especially one I believe is probably the most important subject that we'll have to deal with within our country at this time. And I've also brought on board a very interesting guest. Some of you have seen the programs in the past, uh, know who I'm referring to. But before we get to my marvelous guest, just let me say that as Americans, we have to really start not only looking at what's going on in our country right now, we also got to start actually thinking about what's going on. We got to really start using our critical thinking skills. Now, I just found out this morning that apparently the President of the United States or his so called supporters are trying to sic the FCC on, what's his name, Stephen Colbert. Because apparently the joke that he made about Donald Trump, oh, well, the Donald didn't like that. It hurt his feelings. He feels that he wasn't respected by Mr. Colbert. Now, ain't that something? Donald Trump is nursing hurt feelings. Now, of course, someone's going to tell me, well, hey, it's not so much whether or not you like Donald Trump. It's the fact that he is President of the United States. And because of that fact, his office deserves a certain amount of respect. Well, guess what, Pilgrim? Ordinarily, I would agree with that. Our institutions here in America have suffered a hell of a lot of punishment. Although, let's keep in mind that most of this punishment for the last 30 odd years has been self-inflicted. And I'm afraid that that is the problem here with Mr. Trump. Now, Mr. Trump wants to go after a comedian for practicing his livelihood, for earning a dollar for himself and his family, because that's what comedians do. They make jokes about people in the public arena. They make jokes about the situation in the country. And hell, that's what they're there for. But Mr. Trump is going to take, he's going to take that, this idea that, well, hey, because I'm president, you can't joke about me. Or worse, not just that I'm president and I don't want you to joke about me. In his case, it's more of a, well, I'm president, so I will tell you what kind of jokes are passable and which aren't. And you take this fact of what Mr. Trump and his sycophants are trying to do, and then you look at the fact that Donald Trump seems to be an American president that has never met a ruthless dictator that he didn't like. The guy in Turkey, the gentleman in the Philippines that has slaughtered, 7,500 or more drug users. And of course, how can we forget Putin? Now, all of these folks, all three of these folks, and oh, by the way, I almost let it slip my mind. The young gentleman in Korea, North Korea, that is promising the world some type of Armageddon in the Western Pacific if he doesn't have his way. You know, the guy that had his own uncle assassinated. These are the people that Trump speaks highly of. Of course, when it comes to just a quick example, the Prime Minister of Germany or the head of Canada, he has some pretty negative things to say about them. But oh, how can we forget they're elected through the democratic process. The people that Trump seems to have so much unmitigated praise for are dictators. And now he wants to follow their path. No one in Turkey would dare, inside Turkey, make a joke about this guy, this was he prime minister or president in Turkey that just won his election under very funky circumstances. Nobody there would dare to make a joke about him inside the country. Definitely, they wouldn't. They would be very afraid to make a joke about the head of the Philippines when they're in the Philippines. And of course, well, we've seen what happens to people that try to, shall we say, poke fun at Putin. Same thing with our friend in North Korea. So why is it that Donald Trump seems to me more and more adapting the behavior patterns of these dirty, bloodthirsty dictators? As an American president, I think that that's not the proper way for him to behave. And it's not proper for the FCC or for a president to come off their high pedestal and try to harass comedians who are doing what the public wants. Because God knows, after over 100 days of Trump, we need all the laughter that we can find. Now, for the day, I have my marvelous guest here, Mr. David Straham, and trying to introduce a guy like him is kind of rough because you have to really sit down and think, well, what has he not done? We're talking about a guy that was an Air Force officer, an author, a teacher, teaching aeronautics no less, and an activist. And I'm sure there's probably a half a dozen other things I'm leaving out. So, folks, without further ado, David.
Well, thank you very much for being here, making me come out, and I enjoy coming and speaking with you. Mm-hmm. You know, there are a number of things on my mind right now. When we talk about critical thinking and doing critical thinking for the masses of people, I find that those who rule are not too happy about that. Because if people were able to do critical thinking and do a system analysis of where they're living, things would be much different. As I see it, most people going to the schools and being affected by the media, print, television, radio, and other forms of media, everything is set up so that people will not do critical thinking because we're living in a system, and this system is designed to benefit those people at the very top. We have a situation now at this present time where we have at least 800 or so billionaires that live in the country. Mm-hmm. We have thousands and thousands of millionaires, and we have a tremendous disparity in income and wealth between those at the top and those at the bottom. So in order for people to understand what is going on here, they need to be able to do a system analysis. And when they do that, they will find out a lot of things that no one talks about. They will learn that those at the very top, that fraction of that 1%, really own the place. They control the place. You may have some of the things that you think about when you think about democracy, but they control that. They manage people. What they do is they're the ones who select who's going to run, and you essentially have just two so-called parties which have the same goal in mind. And that goal in mind is to enrich the people at the top and not worry about the people down at the bottom. And that reflects itself in all the policies that those people in Congress and state legislatures and so forth put forth, because they're essentially meeting the needs and serving those at the top, not the masses of people that are in this country. When we think about what's been going on in the last few weeks about this Trump care versus Obamacare, people don't understand, because you're not going to see that much in the media, that one of the reasons that these Republicans who are on the far right and the Democrats, well, I call them Republicans too, but they're left of the ones on the right, because they don't want Obamacare in there, because some very wealthy people had to kick in money in the form of taxes to make Obamacare work. So they don't want to pay the taxes. They don't want to pay taxes if the tax is a penny. Everything is done to benefit those who have a tremendous desire to control and be at the top. People, if they got what they want, most people want single-payer health insurance, but that's not in effect. But that's what the people want. But what we have now is a market-driven health insurance program that serves the needs of the industry called insurance for the most part. And that's not serving the needs of the people.
You know, now, I always tell folks that one thing about my show, I believe in total transparency, and I also believe in giving everyone a shot with their ideas. Now, I'll tell you, in the name of transparency, I am a registered Democrat. And put it this way, I'm happy being a registered Democrat. I am disappointed in some of the features that my party has taken up. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. Now, Democrats, with Obamacare, well, in the first place, let me also say something here too. And it's in conjunction with a newspaper article that I have here. I myself believe in single payer. As a matter of fact, that's how Trump, he didn't get himself in trouble. What he did, he made himself look like a fool. Because he has the, I don't know if you know this or not, right now, we have the visiting prime minister from Australia, visiting president from Australia. And they're sitting on the couch together, for the, photo ops and what have you. And Trump turns around, tells this guy, the president of Australia, hey, Australia, you're great. You're really cool. Hell, you got a much better healthcare system than we do, with much better results. And Bernie Sanders picks up on this, as I'm sure most of you out there will, because Australia has what? What kind of healthcare does Australia have? Well, Australia and New Zealand, they are just like the rest of the industrialized world. They have single-payer health care. In other words, they have their system is Medicare for all. Yet, Trump just pushed through an agreement with Republican congressmen, because no Democrat, I think only in the whole Congress, only, I think it was 4 Democrats voted for that bill. And that's because they're probably in a red state or their districts are red. And they were scared of being primary, which, by the way, that's going to happen to them anyway. But that's another story. But Trump is parading around because he's got his first little victory. And yet, he congratulates a visiting president over having a health care system, which he himself sits there and says is better, way better than ours. So the question then becomes, well, Mr. Trump, if you feel that Australia's health system is so superior to ours, then why the hell don't we adopt a similar system? I think a 6 or 7-year-old kid can figure that out. And see, this is what we're facing. Now, a lot of Democrats, and see, sometimes I think that we put too much on our so-called elected officials. I'll give you an example. Okay, we remember the great healthcare wars that we had in this country. 2009, 2010. And then again in, what's the next one? 2012. And then 2014. I call these dates up because these are the dates or the years when Democrats were slayed. We were killed in the Congress and in the state houses across this country. And why did that happen? Because Democratic representatives that voted for Obamacare, most of them were mowed down. In other words, they lost their reelection bid. Because at that time, the masses of American people felt that Obamacare was just some kind of welfare scheme and that it was basically trying to take their quote-unquote hard-earned dollars and give it to people who were unworthy. In other words, they brought up, those that were fighting against Obama brought up that image again, which the Republicans, they take it out of their playbook. They have a little box of tricks every so often when they need it.
I'd like to answer the question that you asked.
I'll be right there. And they bring out this racial thing. So therefore they're saying those people who are undeserved, meaning people of color. Democrats bravely supported the Obamacare, and they were constantly cut down for it. Now we're going to see that people now are fighting for Obamacare because they realized after a few years, hey, I didn't have any insurance until Obama came. Hey, my wife would have died if it wasn't for Obamacare. And, this is one of the things that really drives me bananas about this country. Same white Anglo-Saxon Protestant people that were against Obamacare are now defying their Republican representatives and saying, if you don't vote to continue my health care, you're going to work at McDonald's. But you're not going to be representing my district because we're going to vote you out. And I'm just amazed at that. Now,
well,
you tell me.
You asked a question.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the meeting with the Australian person.
Uh-huh.
And you said, well, why don't we have that? That's what Trump said it was so good.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to respond to your question.
Okay.
Well, it's really easy. It is easy because the reason that we have what we have now, or whether it's Obamacare or Trump care or whatever, is because it benefits the capitalist class that controls this whole thing. In other words, this is a profit-driven thing. Profit-making hospitals, profit for pharmaceutical firms, profit for medical device firms. This is all based on profit and profit for insurance firms. If people were really considered and the welfare of the population was really important, then you would have a non-profit system run by the federal government to benefit all the people without making profit, huge profit, to these private entities like insurance companies. So that's the story. Also, when we consider other developed countries, and the developed countries at the top in the annual rating of countries are countries like Iceland, Sweden, Switzerland, Denmark. All of those people have universal health care. Now, some have care where the government runs it completely, and others have insurance companies that are involved, like Switzerland. However, if you live in Switzerland, there's no such thing as not being covered by the insurance. If you can't pay it, then the government pays it for you, and it covers all the people living there. So there are all kinds of systems that benefit the people, whereas this one benefits mostly those people who are making that profit out of those $3,000 and $4,000 hospital rooms for care, and that doesn't happen in other places.
Now, what he just said, that bit right there, he's 100% correct in that. Jimmy Kimmel, the guy at the late night show, he broke into tears because his son was just born a few days ago. And he went on to tell the story about how his son was born with some kind of genetic heart defect. And he said how marvelous it was that right there at birth, they were able to correct his heart problem. The kid had just been in the world a few hours, and they saw what the problem was, and they jumped on it and corrected it. Kimmel went on to say how great medical science is for doing that. And then he went on, and this is where some of the so-called conservatives, I think, got extremely nasty with him. So he was a big crybaby, words to that effect. Because he said that here in America, the richest country in the world, nobody's kid should die or go through life with a defect, or go through life with a defect because they don't have the money. And he emphasized that Republican, Democrat, Independent, said it shouldn't make a difference. In America, no child, no person should face death or bankruptcy because of the fact that they don't have the money for a doctor. And the applause that he got, it drowned out the whole theater. But as I said, you had some of these no good, and I hate to use this term because sometimes we get too much, we mix too much religion with our politics, and unfortunately it's not real religion, but that's for another conversation. But I get so angry when people do this, but I'm going to do it myself. In referring to the Republicans, the conservatives that attack Jimmy Kimmel. They are godless people. They are, or maybe even a better phrase, they hate man. In other words, they hate mankind. And see, that is the problem that we're facing now. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you about the defects of the Democratic Party. Don't go no further than me. And you know, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. All right, and I'll let it go with that. But this party is the party that is fighting for universal health care. Because we know, and see, I think this is also part of the problem. The Republicans and conservatives know. See, this is why they feared Obamacare. This is why they fought for the whole 7-8 years. Because, see, they knew that Obamacare was just the camel putting its nose underneath the flap of the tent. And they knew that once any kind of program that the government participated in terms of health care, any type of program like that would start a landslide from their point of view. Because David's right. You have wealthy corporations, wealthy people. They don't want to pay an extra, what, $10 bucks, $15 in taxes so that your kid can have health care, so that your mom can have health care, so that your dad can have health care, so that you can have health care. Because this, what should we call it? This dream, this figment of their imagination, that America is a place where, you know, all you have to do is get up off your ass and work, and boom, you'll be in the middle class. So therefore, there's no need for government to be there as a backup, because that would just make us a nanny state, and we would be unproductive and fall behind the rest of the world. Well, oddly enough, just the exact opposite is true. This country is falling quickly behind the rest of the world because of thinking just like that. Because if you look at all the countries that are doing well, they all have national health care. They all have some kind of national payer, single payer health care. So what are the conservative Republicans talking about? And I hate using that term, Republican conservatives. And I've told folks a zillion times, and I'm quite sure some of you folks out there have heard me say this. I grew up in a Republican home right here in Harlem, USA. My old man was the district leader in Harlem, West Harlem, for the Republican Party. This, what we're dealing with now, this ain't the Republican Party. No matter what some of their New York members or New Jersey members might believe, this is not the Republican Party. The heart of the Republican Party was in the upper Midwest and in New England. This, what we have now, this monstrosity, not that it even has a heart, but this monstrosity is located in the southern United States. It is located in the same part of the country that broke away from the Union because they felt that government had no business interfering with their right to own black people. And this is the major problem. I was just reading a couple of days ago, a Republican congressman, I wish I could find an article. He just came out and said, yeah, poor people who don't have health care, it's their own fault. See, these are the people that believe that it's your fault because you're not wealthy. It's your fault that you don't have health care. It's your fault that your kid is going through life at a much less lesser life expectancy because you didn't have health care, so you couldn't get his heart defect fixed. So all that's your fault. And when it gets so weighted that working class white folks start to say, hey, wait a minute, I don't have health care. Then that's when they come around and they go into their little box of tricks and they come out with their racial game. And unfortunately, too many times that's happened. That's what happened in 2016. And look how the country is what we're going through now. Now, David, go ahead. I was going to ask you something.
I think we have to look at this.
Okay.
First of all, I would say that these two parties that we're talking about, you brought up the Republicans and Democrats, those are two capitalist parties who have the same goal in mind. Now, you've said some things that are very important about the condition of people. People are getting poorer and poorer in this country. In European countries, the number of people that are going to so-called middle class and have upward mobility is greater than this country. Yeah. People here are getting poorer. The wages have deteriorated. White men are even dying sooner.
Yeah, that is. Oh,
the situation is that we have is that the people who control the state, Republican and Democrat.
Someone's calling you. Sorry, folks.
They do not have. They do not have any care or any concern that much for the masses of people. They're concerned with the people at the very top, the people who run the place, the oligarchs and plutocrats who run America are concerned with the benefits that go to corporations and the money. Talking about welfare, most of them are on welfare. They get government contract, thousands of government contracts, war preparation things such as buying airplanes and boats and so forth.
Okay.
This is not for the benefit of the masses of people. That's why the masses of people are poor or near poor in this country. And that's why it's important for people to learn how to do a system analysis. You must do a system analysis to find out what's going on and stop reflexively pulling a lever for the Republican or Democratic Party.
Okay.
And
now,
see, what has happened is that people, in some respects, are brainwashed. Imagine some poor person voting for one of these parties. You're not a capitalist. You're not a ruling class person. Why are you in their party? And that's what I say to people.
Okay. Now, some of what you said I agree with, and some of what you said, no, I don't agree with. Because if you want to talk about there's no difference, and I have other friends that say that
I
same thing.
I never said there's no difference.
Well, I'm telling you right now, the Democrats are fighting for a $15 minimum wage. The Republicans are fighting like madmen to keep the federal wage where it is. And in some states, especially some of our red states, they are trying to abolish a federal minimum wage. The idea of the minimum wage came about after, as you know, after the Great Depression, because of the fact that wise people in the FDR's administration realized that a minimum standard of living is the least that a capitalist nation can do. That people need to have a certain amount of income in order to live half decently. And as I constantly tell people, FDR is the most loved president in our history. And the reason is not so much because of him tearing down a capitalist system. No, he was a great capitalist. He was the one that saved capitalism because he saw that with the conditions as they were and conservatives being idiots, that the country was going to explode. And hold on, something else I want to mention as well.
I want to respond to that.
As I was saying, my dad was the district leader of West Harlem. Not only was he the district leader for the Republican Party, he was also a union organizer, a follower of Marcus Garvey, a union shop steward, and he'd even ran for the assembly. That was the year I was born, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know, man, that's why he lost it. But I understand he did pretty damn good. But so you have to really sit down and think about when you say, well, both parties. The Democratic Party has made some serious mistakes, but I would tell any working person that if you think you're better off with a Republican, you're mistaken.
The Democratic Party was the Dixiecrat Party.
We know that.
And in the period before Roosevelt, most black people that could vote were Republicans.
That's correct.
All right. However,
tell us how
I'm saying.
How did that change, David? Tell the folks how that changed.
That flipped with the Great Depression, and that flipped because of just what you say. Franklin Delano Roosevelt saved capitalism. Don't forget you had socialists, communists, union organizers, whatnot.
Yeah.
So this is a war. Most people don't understand that this is a war. And one of the tactics in the war is sometimes you have to retreat. You have to retreat. So that's what the capitalist class did. They allowed FDR to bring in things like Social Security and things of that nature, even though they excluded, in deference to the Dixiecrats, that's the Democrats, excluding black people who were agriculture workers and domestic workers. That's what they did.
That's right.
Actually excluded these people.
That's what they did. That's what they did to my mother.
What I'm saying to you is that you ought to realize that you're at war with these people. So if you're at war with the people that at the top, and they're with the Republicans and Democrats, I'm not going to be in their party because I'm not going down with the people who are trying to do me in. And that's what we have now.
Well, I tell you quite frankly, most of the people that I run across, they tell me that their biggest regret was that they and the people that they know essentially allowed Trump to win this election. But see, hold on a second, because I heard something, I think it was yesterday, and I sat down, I thought about it, and it makes sense. This whole idea of the reason that Trump was able to win, and you know, it was only 80,000 votes that had him win. 80,000 votes in 3 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And if it wasn't for the 80,000, Hillary would have won the Electoral College, and she would be president because she won the national vote. She won the popular vote by over 3 million people.
That doesn't make any difference because the rules has the Electoral College in there. So we don't even worry about that.
Well, see,
the rules
as far as that is concerned,
Trump win. He won.
As far as that's concerned, we all know that Trump won. The problem is as to why he won, why he was able to win. Now, as I was getting ready to say, the problem that we have in this country, that too many people try to dodge, we have a problem in this country over diversity, plainly over racism, primarily against black and Hispanic people. That is the problem. You have too many working class white people and some who claim to be part of the upwardly mobile group who are so afraid of change. I mean, you hear it all the time, especially, you get on YouTube, social media, and you hear these people, they are afraid. And one of the big, now I'll tell you something I think we both might agree on, and that is that the leadership the political leadership that has come out of the black community has been, as far as I'm concerned, to a large extent, it has been misguided and wrong-headed. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. Too many times, leaders of the black community, they argue like we're asking somebody for something. No, we don't ask a damn thing. We are supposed to demand. People have to remember, and this is something that really, you find this a good deal of this on college campuses too, especially the so-called better colleges. This idea that in certain things, black or Hispanic people really don't belong here. This is the problem with Donald Trump. This is what gave birth to this whole idea of the birther theory, that somehow Obama was somebody that just appeared from Mars. And then, well, how was he able to get into Columbia University? How was he able to get into Harvard? Now, these things didn't have a damn thing to do with him being president. Mm-hmm. But it was this idea of what is a black kid doing, being able to go to Columbia and grab to Harvard.
Race. We need to talk about race.
Okay, well, for the last part of this conversation, that's exactly where we can go.
First of all, most people in this country don't understand what's going on. I want to go back to what you said about minimum wage. Minimum wage is very small. What we need is living wages for people. Living wages.
Got you. That's okay.
And,
good point.
You touched on it in your talk a little while ago about race. People don't understand race. First of all, there's no scientific thing called race.
Right.
It doesn't exist. All the people that are on Earth now are basically the same species. And what has happened is that we go back to American history in the 17th century. That's the basis of the whole concept of white supremacy. And those oligarchs, those people at the top, decided in the latter part of that century they had to come to some place where they could control the people. And the foundation stone of this country is racism. So when you develop a situation where you make up various races based on people's phenotype, that's how they look, their complexion, their hair, their features and whatnot. And that way you can do what all places where they have a dictatorship of a certain class do, divide and conquer. So that all about race, divide and conquer. And this country, being one of the most powerful countries in the world, have mastered the art of racism because they have divided the people up. So the people who work under the capitalist system are all divided up. If people were not divided up, they could not do the things that they're doing. They could not get away with that in Norway and Iceland and Sweden and Denmark, even though there are problems over there, or Switzerland. And those people have a fantastic joy of life, far higher than it is here. But racism is used, and it's used not only against people of recent African background, and I say recent because everybody has an African background. All the people in the world are based in Africa, and tens of thousands of years ago, they went out to different parts of the world and developed certain phenotypes depending on the environment. So people don't understand that. They don't teach that in schools. People think that there's so-called races, the white, the blacks, the yellow, the red. It's just nonsense. So this is a way to control people and keep them divided and suck all the money out of the worker people. That worker people creates wealth. And natural resources don't belong to anybody, belong to all the people. So that way, the ruling class, the oligarchs who run America And the world can suck all the money out of the work of the people for free or near free or slavery or whatever, and all the resources that are in the world, and put that in their pocket. And that's why here you have 800 billionaires and thousands of millionaires.
Okay. So how does that? Okay, so you're saying you're applying that. Just speaking about America now, you're applying that to the situation that we have here in America.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have.
That is worse than those places I did mention.
Okay, now, if anybody's been paying attention, this is Saturday. I get the definite feeling that black people, black men in particular, in terms of dealing with law enforcement, it's almost like some type of hunting season. Now, we've had a couple of cases.
It's open season.
Right, hunting season, open season, exactly. And I think it's necessary for the so-called leadership in the Black Caucus. They need to start running through that Capitol with their hair on fire to let people know that this type of stuff is not going to be tolerated. Now, as I was getting ready to say it earlier, one of the things that really distresses me.
The leadership that you're talking about, this black leadership, the right term for many of them, they're a misleadership class of people.
Okay.
And they are on a tight leash by the people at the top.
Now,
even though they're black,
right, if
and
I
they're
can,
supposed to be representing you,
right,
they're on a tight leash from someone else.
Now, the problem that we have is those same people that you have just referred to as being on a tight leash, when it comes to dealing with the racist class, for example, people like Rush Limbaugh, people like that woman writer, I can't think of her name offhand, and there's another female on the radio. When it comes to people like these, I think that the position that our so-called black, well, you call them black misleadership or misleaders, have really put us in a very vulnerable position. What Black America needs to understand itself, because we don't do enough understanding of this amongst our own communities, is the fact that we're not doing A or B or C as a result of affirmative action. I think that too many people in this country forget that African Americans and Latinos have been in this country, aside from the Native Americans, we have been here longer than anyone else. And I keep seeing this attitude of, oh, well, you know, just like when Obama was president. Oh, well, now you got a black guy doing that, Mr. Affirmative Action. I mean, that was, you know, the whole social media thing, see? And I find that kind of thinking to be so stupid and so dangerous. And see, I hold this man Trump responsible. Now, I hear, yeah, well, you know, there was always racism before Donald Trump. No. Like I told a friend the other night at my house, no. I've been around quite a while. I've been dealing in politics since I was 5. I have never seen such overt hostility towards people of color until this guy Trump came along. And one of the things, and I'm going to make some phone calls, and I'm going to write the FCC, and I'm going to ask him, how dare one of your people mention the fact that you might want to take a look at Stephen Colbert and you know, how he does his show. We have a guy in the White House who ran for president mocking, making fun of a handicapped journalist, professional journalist, mocking the way that the guy, his body has, I guess, uncontrollable shakes at times, and his hands, rattle and that type of thing. And I'm like, how dare he do that and call himself running for president? And how dare the FCC or any of these other right-wing nuts make a comment about, as I said in the beginning, make a comment as if there was something wrong with what a comedian did. This is, we're talking about the president it was routine with the Justice Department taking him and his dad to court for not renting to people of color. Now, they're so sensitive. Some of the stuff I read in the Daily News, because we have, I call them our northern rednecks. They make these comments, okay, about people who are actually trying to make this a society where we can all live with each other. And yet you turn your hostility, you turn your venom upon people like that.
I'd like to start where you talk about
living
to each other. This is a society,
Uh-huh.
the United States that we live in, where that's not the goal. If you do your system analysis, that's not the goal of the people who run the society. First, you got to get it across your head that the masses of people don't run the society. Whether Trump or Clinton got into the White House, the same people from the Wall Street firms and the think tanks that they have, the Heritage Foundation and the rest of them, and the major corporations, they're going to still run the place, whether it's Clinton or Trump, whether it's Democrat or Republican. And we got to get that by our head. The second thing, we have to understand race. Now, I spoke about how race is a bogus concept. It has no scientific basis. However, it has a social basis. Mm-hmm. They made it that way because it is in the ruling class, it's in their favor. It's in their favor. So the people we call rednecks or whatever, they don't understand these things. They don't understand that things are working against them, but they're feeling it now. Their jobs have gone bye-bye. They are suffering and dying sooner. They have all kinds of problems with opioids and so forth, with drugs. So people have to get it by their necks or by their heads that, hey, what's going on? This place is not run for the people. It is run for the benefit of the corporations and the ruling class, the oligarchs at the top, and not the people. And they have to also learn that you're not going to get anywhere with the oligarchs in these parties, Republican and Democrat, because they're going to play you. And that's, play, like my book, Playing the Game. Mm. If you want to know about race, you need to read Theodore Allen's book, The Invention of the White Race. It's a fantastic book. If you want to know about what Bob was talking about, black people been here way before, then you need to read They Came Before Columbus by Professor Van Sertima. These are things you ought to have in your library. But the point is, the trickery of race. I mean, it's a fantastic trickery when you have a small group of people who are able to control millions around this stupid idea of white supremacy racism. And you mentioned something about affirmative action. Now, isn't that something? It's like calling so-called white people, calling black people racist. Well, it's the other way around. Affirmative action has always been for white men in this country. That's affirmative action, not for black people who are able to win some concessions for their subjugation throughout American history. So here they turn the tables and say, oh, black people want affirmative action, when it's the other way around. It's the so-called white people who have been getting the affirmative action.
Well, see, that's the point that I make. Now, and just like I said, and I'll stand by that, I do not agree with what you say in terms of Republicans and Democrats being the same party.
I'm not saying they're the same party.
But going back, but more importantly, when I see the situation in terms of ethnic people, I'll give you a prime example. I have nothing but the utmost respect for the Irish nationalists who basically fought to free Ireland from almost 1,000 years of English subjugation. But what always hurts is when you come here to America, or let me not say it. Let me try to quote someone that could express it far better than I ever could. Frederick Douglass, when he was in Europe, when he was in the British Isles, and he made the statement about listening to the Irish over the what they got over there, the bogs and what have you at night, and calling it a soulful experience, and how he loved those people, and how sad it was that when they first got off the boat, they didn't know what of the term nigger. It was not until they become Americanized that they picked up on the term of nigger. It was not until they started to become, how should I say, told that you're going to be a part of this system, then you have to despise people of color.
Right, you're making a good point.
Yeah.
With those Irish people, when they were in Ireland and being oppressed by the English,
Yeah.
it wasn't anything about race. So the rule is the ruling class, whoever they are, they don't care anything about color. But over here, this is a convenient mechanism for dealing with people, and they have done it very well with coming up with this idea of racism.
Now, as usual, I think that's yours. As usual, I'm in the problem of having so much to say with, well, apparently somebody else has something to say with Brother David, but of having so much to say in a conversation, but running out of time. But I can assure you, folks, that just like MacArthur, he shall return. This is the Concerned Forum, and I'm Bob Gumbs, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. Thank you. Wow, look at that, man. I made it. I hit it right at the zero.
Yes.
Magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the problem. You know, that's one of the big problems that we have in this country, and it really, you know, it gets me so angry